Hello guys, welcome back to another lovely trading video. In this one we're going to be doing a breakdown analysis on Peloton, which is PTON. Now, first thing to look at, and obviously on Friday it closed down 8.5%, so that's why I'm doing the analysis on it today. And as you can see, as it's down so far and did gap down, we do now have a gap area to fill. So just keep an eye on that, because when Peloton does come up, it will most likely come into this area, as 90% of these gaps do get filled. As you can see, any of the past ones, you have some here get filled, same here gets filled. So gap areas especially key to kind of keep an eye on, because more likely than not it will get filled. So that will be kind of that key area to look into, because you can't give price targets really within there. But it is quite likely that the day it comes in to retest this 109 level and breaks through, it will most likely push to that 113 and probably just do that in one day. So that's the gap to keep an eye on. Now we'll go on to the standard deviation channels and look where that's giving us a signal of maybe where to get long or short. So right now you can see we're kind of actually at the statistical mean on the 4 hour, which is kind of considering Peloton a fair value. However, you can see on the daily, it's actually pushing down a bit further past that statistical mean, and it's starting to come into a low risk buy area. So if you look on the right, you can see at 97.25, that is when Peloton becomes a low risk buy entry. However, you can see on the 4 hour that the first deviation, so the low risk entry on the 4 hour, is actually very different. I mean, the difference between them is, if we quickly put up the tool, is 16.5%. So it's not one of those trades where how I would trade it is usually averaging half my size here and half my size at the next deviation. You can't really do that on this because they're so wide apart. So more of the way you can look at these widespread deviations is more that this could be a bounce area, but kind of don't put all your eggs in one basket, and more take it with caution, because as the deviations aren't close together, it may not be as likely for it to bounce at that level, because that just means it's the statistical mean on the 4 hour. However, if it does come into this 97 level and break it, we would most likely get a strong push down to this 81 level. So just keep an eye on this kind of 100 level where we are now. If we can close probably below 97, we would most likely get a strong push down. From then on, we would probably start seeing a strong amount of selling pressure kind of coming into this $81 level, but a bit more tricky to trade, as you can't really kind of average into that trade or get in a bit of size at each of those deviations. So just keep an eye on that. So these are our main price targets where we kind of see it going. It is kind of just consolidating on this upper band right now. So we're kind of just waiting a break, but it could quite easily as well just break upwards if it gets some good news or something like that. We personally wouldn't be shorting or looking to short anything at this 120 level, for the main reason being this deviation has been touched so many times, and I'm not someone who likes to short a sort of resistance that keeps being tapped, because I always think, why does the stock keep coming back to that? It's probably because it wants to break through. So it doesn't make sense for me to short, because I think more likely than not you could lose money. So targets on the upside to either lock in profits or maybe start doing short positions would be 135 would be that first one, which is the first deviation on the daily. Then very close to that you have the 139 on the 4 hour. That would be kind of the key shorting area, which could be seen in a relatively short period of time. However, on the bit more extreme, and probably a few weeks or months away if that, would be this 155 160 area would be another good area to again lock in profits or get short. And on the very extreme area would be the 178 to 174 level. The reason I say this is extreme is that we push Peloton over to the 4th deviation on the 4 hour, and when large cap stocks get to that level, they're more likely than not going to pull back, and quite heavily. So if it does come into this area, a good short area, but I personally wouldn't be holding anything past 160, because more likely than not it will pull back before that anyway. Now, price targets to the downside, if we do continue going down, We have obviously that long, I would start getting long at that 81.50. Right below we have a 77. So this is what I mean by one of those opportunities where you can kind of average in. When I trade these personally, I usually just get in with either 25 or 50% of my position at that first deviation, and then a bit more at the 77. And if you were watching the swing trade recaps like on Amazon and all of that, it does provide lots of trade opportunities and bigger winners. And by trading opportunities, I mean a lot of the times it will come into this 81.50, you get a sharp bounce, so you would lock in your profits most likely then, and then it will break down further and test this 77 for the first time, and again provide another bounce. So you kind of get two trading good trades off one support, or one area of support. If we do break down further, which I don't really think is that likely, but if we do, 61.50 and 42, and also then the 58.30. So the 66.65 and the 58.30, those would be kind of the lowest I see Peloton going, at least in the near term. This 42.10 is very unlikely and will require it to be very oversold. However, if it did come into that level, would be a great buying opportunity. So those are all my price targets. Again, you can just see them on screen. So now we'll quickly go over what we kind of think will happen with Peloton. And as I said, it is at the statistical mean, which kind of does make it a lot harder to predict. But what I could see happening is that we carry on our downtrend, break down a bit further, and come and test this 81.58 but maybe potentially the 77.80 as well. Once we do that, we would get a strong bounce, more likely than not, retest this 97, this first deviation, and we would most likely break through. The reason I say this is, again, we have this gap to fill, which does make me more bullish on the stock, because like I said, more likely than not, a gap gets filled. So looking at this, it's more likely that from this 97 it will push higher and kind of come back into this area of 108 to 113. And once it touches that 113, again, it's kind of anyone's guess where it could go. It could continue upwards and come into these resistance lines over here. But by the time, if it does that, I would just make a new video, because price targets would most likely change. However, if we do carry on downwards, and again, we would most likely get a small bounce kind of off this level, or a bounce off this level, and could come back and retest these. Or we could kind of come in here, get a small bounce, and then continue lower to the 81.58, the 77 levels. So these are kind of my three key kind of buying areas, I would say, for right now, as I don't really see it going down to these levels, at least anytime soon. So these would be key buying areas, at least for myself, so I'd be keeping an eye on those. If I'm getting long in this 97, the key area I'd be looking to lock in my profits would be this gap fill area here. However, if I'm getting long in these, I would be locking in profits at the 97, and if this gap hasn't been filled, I would be looking to lock in the rest at the gap. If the gap has been filled, I'd be pushing close to this 120 or maybe even the 135 as lock-in areas. So I hope that made sense, and I hope you enjoyed the video on Peloton breakdown. Hope to see you in the next one, and that's it. Peace.